budget work session to order. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Mr. Andy Hollis. And your guest. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. This is Kay Brody, our board president.
Nice to meet you and nice to have you in.
Hi, good to see you again.
And thank you all very much. We'll only take up a minute of your time, but I think it's a courtesy we should extend when we ask for your money. We should at least explain what we hope to do with it. So our ask is for $31,417. That number represents a 4% increase for our employees that work in Kent County or do work for Kent County. It's not for the entire system. Also, we have a substantial increase in health insurance. Don't know if the county's having the same challenges or not, and the related fringe that goes with that. So I just want to take a minute and tell you what we've done over the last year to give you some sense of how we're going, which I think is in the right direction. Let's just take Meals on Wheels for a minute. So we have delivered 18,303 meals to the citizens, seniors of Kent County. That represents 105 clients over the course of a year. We served almost 3,000 congregate meals where they come into the senior center to eat, and that was 129 clients. In addition, we have 80 clients that we provided emergency meals to for inclement weather. If we weren't able to deliver it, they'll have something in reserve. 181 clients received health education and nutrition counseling, and 254 seniors came in for Medicare options counseling between September and December last year. That's a big number, but the most important thing for you to know is we can literally save seniors $100 or more a month on their Medicare option. A good number of them were not, and most of us aren't educated enough about the different choices and have been spending more money than they needed to. So it's a real relief to them on a monthly basis to see that. We completed our first fundraising campaign, which we have not done before. We raised $37,000. One of the reasons we did that is because we realized we can't just keep coming to the county commissioners nor to the state for funding. We are responsible for doing some ourselves. So for the first year effort, that was pretty satisfactory, and we'll be doing it again in the fall as well. In terms of Amy Lynn, Senior, our Adult Activity Center, this is my most impressive information. So we looked at a 4-month window between December and the end of April of last year. We had 52 clients, and we had talked to you about wanting to increase that number. So for the same window this year, we're at 147. So we basically tripled the number of people that are coming into the senior center. So a large part of that is because we've increased programming, we've increased the quality of the programming. I simply gauge it by the fact that the parking lot is so filled that they're overflowing into our second lot, which is over by the administration building. I'm really proud of that number. I had shared with Shelley just earlier, I had a unhappy phone call from a patron who wanted to do line dancing, and we had advertised it on Facebook, which she doesn't get, and she was explaining to me how important it was that we switch it over to another website. This is a good problem to have. People are starting to pay attention. Seniors are starting to come out and be more engaged. We were worried post-COVID that wasn't going to happen. We're really seeing numbers that are going in that direction. I have other things, and I don't want to throw too many numbers at you, but we also had promised last year we'd improve relations in the community. We worked hard with the health department for Kent County and for social services. We all have mutual clients with mutual interests and needs. So I'm comfortable telling you that we are definitely communicating at a higher level than we have in the past, which is to the benefit of the citizens of Kent County. So I'll let Kay say a few words, but I'm just going to say, and I shared again with Shelley, I didn't realize, I was in government for many years, so I have some sense of how budgets work, but I did not realize just how tight Kent County's budget was till last year. And the amount of funding that you provided us last year for current fiscal year, I just want to again compliment you all and let you know, and I think we put it to good use based on those numbers, but it was a real hard thing for you all to do. And on behalf of the seniors, thank you for stepping up. We have purposely tried to keep it a smaller amount, a much smaller amount this year, but you just deserve to be recognized for all the contributions you've made, because you stepped up, and looking at your budget, I realized to some extent just how hard that was. So thank you very much for that.
Very
Appreciate it.
good. Well, thank you, Andy, and we appreciate that, and it's always good to have you. And you're right, you've been around local government
Thank you,
quite a
Ron.
bit. We both have.
Yeah, exactly,
But
exactly.
it's always good to see you.
Appreciate it. Do you want to say a few words?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to echo Andy's words. We are so appreciative of the help that you gave us last year, and we really are, and people know that you've given us that help, and I'm very thankful for that. And I also want to recognize the fact that you came to our volunteer event, which was great. It was great to see you there. It was great for the citizens. And John, we thank you for coming to our planning session last year with the board, so that was very helpful to have you there. One of the things that has happened specific for Kent County in the grants we've gone after, and we've gotten several grants this year. You did mention the Tome grant. But we got a grant from a local benefactor to replace the equipment to redo the kitchen in the Amy Lynn Ferris Center. And the kitchen's more than 20 years old. You know what happens to 20-year-old kitchens. So we're real happy to have that in the process. And I don't know, it will certainly be done before fall.
Correct.
I don't know exactly when, we wait. So just want to say that we're very appreciative for the help that you've given us. And also the need that we've seen, and I'm sure you hear this everywhere, but I've done volunteer work with Meals on Wheels and for the senior center for more than 20 years, and I have never seen the need as great as it is right now. And it really gets to you.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It's tough. Thank you, gentlemen.
I just have one real quick question for you, Andy. The salary percentages that you're proposing for staff, do you have a number on that percentage-wise?
It should be in the breakdown that we submitted, but I can get that for you. Absolutely.
I
Happy to
think
do
the
that.
memo says
Is it in
4%,
there?
Andy.
Oh, it is 4. I thought $1. I didn't know what what it equated to in the dollar amount.
Yeah, the salary and fringe dollar amount is right at the 31,417.
And that's across the board for all
Well,
employees?
Not all employees, the ones that work in Kent County or provide services to Kent County citizens. We try to not have you paying for Talbot or Caroline services.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Appreciate it. The Rockwall Business Association was on the schedule to be next, but I don't see them here. So, Dr. Couch?
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Before I begin, I would like to state that Ms. Stewart will not be joining us today. She broke her foot over the weekend and is in the process of having surgery right now. So she'll be in a boot for a while.
Oh, my.
So it was kind of a freak accident, but, so I have with me Dan Hushin, who is our supervisor for human resources.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone.
So, good morning, President Fithian, County Commissioners, Ms. Heller. This will be my last budget presentation, so yay for me. But I did provide you with two handouts. One of them is the PowerPoint that I think kind of draws your attention to the basics of what's in my budget. And then I provided to you our working budget book, which provides a very detailed accounting of where all the monies are being assigned in our budget, so it's fully transparent. You can look at that, look at the number of FTE we have in each of our departments, what is being paid out of each category, and where the monies would be assigned. So I would be happy to go through all of that as well. But to begin, this is my proposed budget. It is a budget that's collaborative with our departments and with our schools. I generally ask them to provide me with all of their wants and needs, and then we have to do the same thing that you all do, look at what's available and see what's going to make the cut and what is not. But our objectives for this budget were to obviously look at our 2025 budget priorities, look at our estimated revenues from the state and the county, and then review our needs as a school system, and then review overall 2025 budget and funding needs to balance our budget. As you know, we are required by law to submit a balanced budget. And then we also reviewed our capital improvement funding request for 2025. The board listed the following priorities as their budget priorities. Obviously, salary increases for employees. That is a priority for our school system. Not only, I'm sure you all are facing the same thing, being competitive with our surrounding counties and our LEAs is very important, and plus the blueprint requires that we make some progress in moving our teachers to beginning salaries of $60,000 by FY27. Increase in health insurance. We also saw an increase in our health insurance. It wasn't as high as we thought it would be. Our increase is going to be about 8%. So we were anticipating it would be higher than that, but we are only going to see an increase of 8%. And then we reviewed all of our operational costs and realized that we really needed to make some adjustments and up those amounts that we have in utilities, maintenance, et cetera. As you know, many of our buildings are old, and it's costing a lot more to maintain our buildings, and just a lot of things have been occurring in the last couple of years that we feel that we need to increase the amount of money we put in our operational costs. And then finally, the blueprint mandates that we have to have in place. And I'll talk a little bit about those as I share what we have in our budget. The next slide shows the estimated revenues from the county and the state. I think it's important, and we've made this appeal to the State Board of Education and also the AIB, which is the Accountability Implementation Board for Blueprint, that, years past, before Blueprint came into play for all of us, we were given a pot of money, and we could allocate those monies as we saw fit and move them around and address and balance our budget. But now we have specific categories in which the monies have to remain. And it's problematic to some degree because foundation money is really the catch-all. Foundation dollars are where we would pay for all of our additional programs like art, music, maintenance, all of those things that we have that don't really have a specific category. That's where we have to draw those dollars from. And if we have salary increases for other employees that don't fit into these categories, it has to come out of the foundation. And if you'll see, you look at the county share for our foundation, it's down $32,000. And from the state, it's $244,000, which really hurts because we have to then figure out where we're going to pull dollars to fill in those gaps. You'll see that we are also going to see a decrease in our Blueprint Transition Grant from the state of $150,000. And for career and college readiness, that is referred to as CCR, and that provides us with the dollars to pay for the dual enrollment courses that we have to pay for our students. This morning, I received an email from the Maryland State Board of Education that essentially said I think at their meeting today, they're going to approve some guardrails for paying for dual enrollment courses because the superintendents have brought this up to the AIB and also to the State Board of Education that we don't have enough money to pay for all of the costs associated with dual enrollment. We have many kids that want to take, 3 courses a semester. They want to take courses during the interim, which is in between the fall and the spring. They want to take courses in the summer. There is not anywhere near enough money to pay for all of that. So the state board and the AIB got together, listened to the concerns of the superintendents, and now we will only be required to pay for 2 classes in the fall and 2 classes in the spring. If the student chooses to take more classes, say 3 classes in the fall, the 3rd class they have to pay for that class on their own. It would not be paid for by the school system. In addition, the students have to be CCR, meet all of the conditions for CCR, which means that they have to demonstrate an adequate grade point average, and they have to pass the tests that they are required to pass in order to graduate and to demonstrate that they are CCR ready. So we already pretty much did an evaluation of how many students have been taking courses in the past that may not have been CCR ready, and it only eliminated maybe 6 to 8 students. So it will help our budget a little bit, but not substantially. And then the AIB and State Board of Education are going to start meeting with the community colleges to talk about their fees and talk about some of the increase in costs that are basically the responsibility of the school system. For instance, we just noted on the Chesapeake College website that their fees are going up, which we were not notified about. We just saw it on their website. Tuition is going up from $96 to $98.25, and their consolidated fee is going up from $37 a credit to $45 a credit. So we're going to have to be responsible for those increases as well.
Dr. Couch, can I ask you
Yes.
a real quick question? The blueprint is a mandate,
Yes,
and
it's
the
law.
students have been taking up to maybe 3 courses at Chesapeake College or Washington College. And now the state school board has decided that they're going to restrict that or limit that.
Yeah,
to only 2.
to 2 courses in the fall and 2 courses in the spring.
Do they have the authority to do that
Yes, they do.
without legislation?
They can do that. They put that in place. There's nothing
that's
in
part
the
of
law, there's nothing in the law that says that you can't, that you have to take 3 courses, 2 courses, whatever, but they are putting in those guardrails. So there's nothing in legislation that restricts it, there's nothing that doesn't restrict it. So we're not restricting the students, but they're saying that only 2 courses per semester would be the responsibility of the school system.
Well, I certainly appreciate what the superintendents did on the county's behalf, on all the county's behalfs. But I was just curious on why the state school board has the authority to differ from the mandate that was put in place.
Well, it's a joint decision made by the AIB and the state school board. So it was a joint decision, which is great because honestly, in the past, they haven't really been communicating that well. So for them to come together and to come up with these guardrails and to work and listen to what the superintendents were stating gives us a lot of hope moving forward, because there are some other inherent problems with the blueprint that we've also shared with them, and they are listening. So hopefully some of those things will come to fruition in the future. But this was the most critical piece for us, was the dual enrollment requirements and the legislative mandates, if you will, to pay for these courses. And as I stated when I was in here the last time, in some cases, the fees were as expensive as the books and the tuition. So it really took a lot of school systems by surprise this year when we were responsible for all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Concentration of poverty, well, compensatory education, that pretty much, we saw an increase from the county side and so that, and an increase from the state side as well. The English learners, you'll see those dollar amounts from the county and the state. I think for us, the transitional supplemental instruction, that is to provide some one-on-one help for our primary age students, so the students up to third grade, provide some tutors and those types of things. You'll see we are going to experience a decrease in that particular budget line item, so we'll have to make adjustments in the number of tutors that we have available for our pre-K through third grade students. You'll see an increase in pre-kindergarten and then both from the state and from the local. And then you'll see that we see a $6 decrease from the county for national board certification, and then a $6 increase from the state. But essentially, you'll see on the county side, the blueprint coordinator, that is a reduction because that was no longer required in FY25, but a responsibility for the school system. And then the $250,000 above MOE was the allocation that we received legislatively from you all last year that was not in the budget for this year, or for next year, excuse me. So the next slide just shows a little bit of the estimated revenues from the county and from the state. COP is concentration of poverty, and TSI was the transitional supplemental instruction, which I just reviewed. Concentration of poverty are for our schools that meet the requirements to be a concentration of poverty school. And at this time for this year, the two schools that are concentration of poverty schools are Garnett and Rock Hall Elementary. Next year, Kent County Middle School will be eligible for that, the increase in funding. So the next slide is what made the cut, if you will, for our 2025 budget needs. Our salary projections that we need for FY25 are $1,048,668. This is a placeholder in our budget, and this is pretty much in line with what the county has for your placeholder, even though we have not completed our negotiations with with all of our unions. We have 3 unions that we have to negotiate with. This placeholder does not exceed what the county has in your placeholder for salary increases for your employees equally for ours. That would include a step and a COLA, which would not exceed 6%. Health insurance, that is what is required for us to meet the increase of insurance, health insurance, $302,351, which represents about an 8% increase. We also have an increase of $70,000 for pension, and so the costs that are needed for our salaries and health insurance would be $1,421,019. Other budgetary needs that made the cut, if you will, for our budget was the increase for college and career readiness. Those are the dual enrollment courses. We anticipate that even though there are going to be some guardrails, we only had maybe 3 students that took more than 2 courses in any given semester, although it was much greater in some of the larger school systems. I think part of the reason why it's harder for our students to take more than 2 courses is because in some cases they have to travel. So that's a barrier for them. So we put in an increase of $55,705, and that pretty much equates to what we will pay out this year, the increase that we will need in order to make next year's budget. We are adding in a teacher for Rock Hall Elementary School, and the estimated amount is $89,622. That is to meet the pupil-teacher ratio that we pretty much set district-wide. And we had a class at Rock Hall that exceeded 33 students this year. And so we pushed in some of the support staff that we had available, and so it worked. But as you know, some of you know, we will not be having our Maryland Leads grant moving forward. So the instructional coaches that we had in place at all of our schools have been eliminated in the FY25 budget because obviously we could not support them with our budget. So in
Say
order.
that again, Dr. Cass.
We received a grant for the last 2 years for Maryland Leads from the State Department of Education. Maryland State Department of Education, those grants run out at the end of this year. And
That
so
was to pay for what?
instructional coaches that we had at each of our schools. So we had like a teacher that pushed in and helped guide the instruction of the schools. Most school systems have them in every one of their schools. We were one of the, or probably the only school system that didn't have them available. So we were glad to have that funding to push those instructional coaches in our schools, but in order to maintain them, we would probably have needed another $1 million. So that's not really feasible. So we did not push them forward.
I see that you have $89,622 here for a teacher at the Rock Hall Elementary School.
Right, that's, yeah.
That's obviously not a $60,000 starting salary, is it?
That includes benefits.
Yeah, I know, but is the teacher going to start at 60,000 or?
Well, we usually, when we project forward, we usually project a teacher of 10 years, and so that's what that, it might be less, it might be more. We might hire a teacher that has 20 years
I suspect it would be
experience.
more with benefits and,
Right, but that is, the 89,000 is with the insurance costs, the FICA, all of the benefits, and the salary of the teacher, so that's all encompassing.
so
of
what is the salary that you're currently offering for starting teachers?
We're just under 52,000. So that's about, we still have about 8,000 that we have to work towards that 60,000.
And that's pretty much our average allocation that we have for teachers, just because, we don't always have first-year teachers, just like you all have to project what you might need for any given position. It may not be a first-year employee. It might be an employee with 10 or 15 years' experience in some
28.
cases. Pardon?
Or 28 like?
Or 28, yeah. Or 43 like me, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so then operations, you see there's $267,000 that we allocated for increase in operational costs. Homeschool reviews, we reduced a position this year in the Student Services Department, and part of that coordinator position that we reduced in this year's budget required that individual to oversee the homeschool reviews. We are responsible, even though they are homeschool students, we are responsible for ensuring that they meet all the criteria for being an official homeschool student. So we wanted to add in some money to bring in perhaps a retired teacher that could help us with those reviews, and that's really a small allocation. We are projecting or asking for an increase at the high school to add another math teacher. One of our challenges has been to meet CCR with our students in the area of math. And one of the things that has been glaring is, one of the things that we did this year in order to balance our budget as well was to cut a teacher at the high school. We cut 2 teachers at the high school, and one of them happened to be in the math department. Well, the math department has 4 teachers assigned to that department, whereas all of the other departments have 5 teachers. So the class sizes in the math department are relatively high. So in order to keep them in line with, say, the English department that has 5 teachers, the science department that has 5 teachers, the board felt strongly that we should make it all even and add another teacher at the high school to bring down those class sizes and also.
What is relatively high? What is the average number?
They had, in some cases, they had 30 kids, 30 plus in their math classes. whereas other classes, other departments, they were down to 24 and 25. So. We also projected a slight increase in our CTE programming, $6,850. We added another pathway at the high school, so now we have a computer science pathway for our students, and that has been in the works for the last couple of years, and we finally got that approved. So now we will be increasing to 11 pathways versus 10 at the high school, and one of them will be computer science. So the total other budget needs that we have for the school system is $512,798, bringing the grand total to $1,933,817. If you add the estimated local state revenue increase, so we deduct the $201,473, we are projecting to use $800,000 of our fund balance. The amount needed for us to balance our budget and our request to the county is $932,344. Capital improvement funding request. We would like to continue to move forward with Kent County Middle School as a major project for the school system. We were notified by the state that we were approved for $1,822,090 for planning and design. That is the design allocation from the Build to Learn Act. Many of you that may not be aware of the Build to Learn Act, that was in place through legislation about 3 years ago. Could have been 4, but I'm thinking 3. And there was money set aside for each county. And so this is the money that was set aside for Kent County. But what will happen is if this money is not utilized, it could be reallocated to other school systems. So I just wanted to put that out there for your consumption, if you will. Just to note that that money has been earmarked for Kent County, but if this project does not move forward, it could be allocated to another county. So because we are still 50-50 with planning and design, the request to the county would be $1,748,910 for a grand total of $3,571,000 for planning and design. Planning and design usually takes a year, and we have a lot of hoops that we will have to jump through with the state in order to get the project, if you will, ready for construction when and if we get to that point. And there are, we have to meet the criteria for the number of students that will be in the school and the square footage that we're allowed to have based on the size of the school. And we have been also submitting proposals for other grant options that would bring down, I think you heard from Dr. Lever, all of the rocks that we're trying to turn over to try to bring the cost down and for actual construction. So we're moving forward with all of those things. And then we're also in the process of developing and signing an MOU with the Build to Learn, through the Build to Learn Act, which would allow the state to come in and do the project management when we get to the construction phase of this project. And that would save, the county would not have to put out any money for project management and it would help the school system in terms of putting things out to bid. So they can provide a lot of services that will be beneficial to everyone when we get to that point for construction. But anyways, for FY25, that's what we're asking for capital improvement. And I'm happy to go through the budget workbook. I can just briefly call your attention to a few things, and then I'll stand for questions, if you will. If you look at page 2 on the budget workbook, that is an overview of what I've already described in terms of the amount of revenue that we would be getting for FY25, and then a show of what we got this year and what we are proposed to get next year, and also showing that we would use $800,000 of our fund balance, which would leave a remaining of $1,605,573. If you look at the next page after that, it shows a very good representation of where we are with our budget for FY24 and the percentages of where, how much we spend for each category. And so that information is there for you as well, just so that you can see where the majority of our funding is allocated in our budget. For FY25, you'll see that that pretty much has not changed. It pretty much represents the same amount of percentage that we utilize in our budget, and, over 85% of our budget is salaries and benefits for our employees. The unrestricted budget comparison on page 5 shows you the difference and the comparison from 24 to 25. So you'll see what the change is. And that represents, and if you want to correlate that, you can go into each of the specific categories and see. I want to call your attention to page 6. It shows the administration. It tells you what is paid out of that particular category. And then it shows you the FTE that we have proposed for 1 year to the next. So you'll see that essentially, we're not overinflating it with positions. We have the new positions that we added in. There were some positions that we were unable to fill in prior years that was in the budget that has been placed back into the budget, but we don't have any additional FTE that we're requesting beyond what was in the PowerPoint presentation. Category 1, it shows, it goes pretty granular in terms of showing you how much we allocate for office supplies, testing supplies, data processing supplies, board members' expenses for our annual dues with MABE, and then also traveling to go to some of the trainings. So I wanted to get this to you right away so that in full transparency, if you wanted to go into the details and guts of our budget, you'll see where everything has been allocated. And I'm happy to go through the rest of them, or it's actually I will yield to what you would like for me to do. I'm happy to go through it if you would like me to.
Dr. Katz, I don't ever remember us getting into that much of the budget.
Yeah.
What our issue is how much money we got available. How you spend it, that's certainly
Right.
your.
But I wanted you to have that because I know there's a bill before the assembly in terms of county not really seeing all of the details of our budget, and I wanted you to have that from us so that you had that available.
Well, let me ask you this question. How do you think the blueprint is working so far?
Well, I do see, listen, I believe in the pillars. Obviously, I was on the Kirwan Commission, so I'm not going to lie about that. I totally support all of the pillars. I think it will improve education in Maryland. My problem was when it was translated into legislation, it was translated into a very different animal, if you will, that many superintendents had difficulty wrapping their heads around. And I think a lot of it was thrown at us very quickly and said, we're not, instead of focusing, say, on pillars 1 and 2, and then, rolling the others in as we went along, it was the AIB made the decision that all of the pillars would be implemented simultaneously, which became a heavy lift and for many of us, because we were running into problems as we were trying to implement them. For instance, the 3-year-old program is still a problem for many school systems. Us, because we don't have the numbers of daycares, if you will, and preschool programming that are outside the school system, we can't meet the requirement of 30% that we have to provide through the blueprint. So they did come up with a waiver, which we will access the waiver. It looks like we might meet the 30% in coming years, because we are working with other daycares in order for them to be accredited, because all of those programs that meet the criteria for 3-year-old programs have to be accredited. So we've been working with, our staff has been working with their staff so that they can be fully accredited. That's a problem. The CCR, the dual enrollment, was a problem for us, because it was like, yeah, it was all fine and well while we were just paying for tuition. Then tuition and books, okay, that was fine and well too, but then the fees came into play, and then it just became unreachable for many school systems. The $60,000, I mean, I am full support of paying our teachers a starting salary of $60,000. I think they should be paid that amount of money. They are professionals. They should be treated as such. We expect a lot of our teachers. It's a hard job. I equate that to law enforcement, to public safety. They deserve a salary in which they can live on and not have to have multiple jobs just to support their families. So I'm full support of that. There's a lot of things in the blueprint itself that have been very beneficial. Concentration of poverty, huge benefit for our county, huge benefit for the schools, because it provides them with enough money to provide outreach to their school community, and also meet the needs of our students and provide wraparound services. So that's been huge for us as well. I do think that the 75-25, I think Senator Hershey was speaking about that at the chamber post-legislative meeting, where he said that there would be waivers that we should make use of those waivers. What those waivers are about, I went and researched that because I didn't really understand what he was talking about. And what we have to do is we have to demonstrate that 75% of our funding is going out to the schools and 25% is for other categories. And the problems, and I think I noted that when I was here the last time, the problem with that is in some cases it's a little more difficult because you might have a more senior staff. Say, for instance, at Rock Hall, it's a small school. I'll just use that as an example. You may have some very experienced and seasoned teachers that are at the top of their salary schedule. So the cost for that school might be well more than 75%. It might be 90. And whereas you might have a school that has a high turnover, say, let's use the middle school, for instance, and they may have a lot of first-year teachers, and so it looks like we're not allocating the right amount of money, where the staffing is absolutely where it needs to be, but the costs for running the schools are very different. So what do you do as a superintendent if you're required to meet the 75-25? Do you involuntary transfer teachers to other schools? Do you say, okay, well, now we're going to have to take teachers away from Rock Hall and put them at the middle school and make them even, and then bump up class sizes to 40 at a school? It doesn't make sense. I don't think that was the intent of the blueprint, to do that. I understand the overall concept that you should be treating all of the schools alike, but I think that there are some granular problems with looking at it in this these rose-colored glasses, if you will. So there are some problems with that. And so that's what Senator Hershey was talking about, that for FY '25, we're going to be submitting benchmark data for the baseline year so that we can show them that we're making progress towards the 75-25. But in FY '26, we have to be able to reduce that amount by 50%. And so, and then we have to be able to meet all of the requirements by FY '27. And so if we can't do that, then we can access a waiver. And so, my staff will be very much aware of that, and that will be the next superintendent's issue to deal with. But for us, the 75-25 does not work. It didn't work for Cecil County. It doesn't work for a lot of the small school systems on the shore. Just does not work. So if they would look at it as an aggregate, in other words, look at it as a whole, all of our 5 schools together, are we allocating 75%? We can handle that. That's not a problem. But when you start trying to look at individual schools, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
That precise example is one that Rachel has talked to the county administrators about, and the fact that we should be moving our teachers around to meet thresholds. And I remember the county administrators all were
Gasping.
gasping, thinking, oh, this is not gonna fly, because now what you're sacrificing is morale.
Well, it's not only that, and it's easy, and it's easy.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's easy for someone who hasn't been in school leadership to make that comment. And I've known Rachel for a long time, but to be honest with you, I completely disagree with that comment, because that is absolutely not, in my opinion, the intent. And when Mr. Leggett, who is the president, heard the superintendents appealing and showing in practicality of implementing this requirement and what it would look like and what it would mean, I think he was shocked himself. Because it's one thing to say, oh, it's easy to do. Yeah, you should be moving your most senior teachers to a school that has high turnover. Yeah, it sounds fine and well, but, how many teachers are actually going to stay if they fall in love with, say, Rock Hall Elementary, they want to stay there. They want to finish their career there. You're going to move them now and say, sorry, you're too high, we're paying you too much money, so now we're going to move you to Kent County Middle School? That's going to go over like a lead balloon. So, I think there's problems with that. And I think if we can look at it as the aggregate, it makes better sense. But if you start looking at individual schools trying to meet the 75-25, it's going to be a disaster. And our appeal as superintendents is, when it comes to that, then who's going to take the fall for this? Who's going to take the fall for not being able to implement the blueprint? The school systems, the superintendents, the administration. And it's all because of requirements that are being imposed upon us that don't make sense. And we're trying to appeal to them that we understand where you're coming from, but it doesn't make sense in application.
Think about a school system, a district that has twice the landmass of Kent County. And somebody works right down the street from their house, but now you're gonna tell them that they're gonna have to travel an hour
Yeah.
to get to their school.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. The 75-25 is the requirement that will keep all of us up at night, for sure. I was happy that we have the opportunity.
I apologize, but would you explain that 75-25 one more time?
Okay, you have to look at each of your schools, you have to look at the allocation, and you have to make sure that each of your schools has 75% of the budget in the particular line items assigned to that school.
Okay.
So in some cases, you won't meet that 75 because you might have a bunch of first-year teachers at that school. So you're
see.
staffing that school, let's say you're staffing 20 teachers at this school and 20 teachers at this school. And 20 teachers at this school, they're all at the high end, getting close to retirement, very high-paid teachers. So that is going to come out to maybe 90%. And then you come to this other school, perhaps, that has a lot of first-year teachers, and they don't even meet the 75.
I see what you're talking about.
So it's based on salaries and all of the requirements that you have to run that school. So it's a problem. That is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And we were making no headway at all talking to the prior superintendent of the state superintendent, and also to the executive director of AIB. But now we have made some headway. The superintendents actually put together a work group, and there are probably 6 or 7 superintendents that are on that work group committee, and have been meeting privately and individually with the members of the AIB and also for the State Board of Education. And I think finally, we feel like we've been heard and we've made some headway. And a perfect example was the memo that we got this morning about CCR. So I'm really, really hoping that with this waiver that's in place for the 75-25, that we'll start to see some movement about what's working with the blueprint and what's not. And what can we delay and what can we not?
Well, if you look at the amount of funding that the blueprint calls for this year, in our case, and next year, really I'd be the first to say that if we fund what the blueprint is calling for this year, that'd be the least amount of money that I've ever seen allocated to the school system in my 20-some years.
Right.
How come? And then 2 years down the road, we get hit, instead of 250,000, I think next year it goes to 350 or 400, and then the year after that, it's $1.4 million, and then it stays $1.3 million, $1.4 million, $1.1 million.
What I would
every
say
year
is-
for 7 or 8 years.
What I would say is, I think we're going by old budget allocations, or at least what they thought was going to be in place for the blueprint. They're in the process of redoing those amounts, so I would be really cautious about what it might be in future years, because I don't know. Many of those requirements were in place were in place prior to the pandemic, and a lot of school systems lost a lot of enrollment, student enrollment, where students went to private school or chose homeschooling and never came back. So they're going to have to redo those amounts, and I don't think DLS has completed those yet. That was my understanding, and they're going to have to update those, so I don't know. I don't have the $1 million question.
But in our case, we have to look at
Right.
what's estimated.
Right.
I mean, we'd be foolish if,
Right. Right.
we got to make sure that we're looking for the worst-case scenario, really, if you want to call it that. But, and then my one problem that I think I mentioned to you 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had a short discussion about this, is when you use that fund balance money for reoccurring costs, like, let's say that we were to give you allow you to use 800,000 of the fund balance this year. And maybe it's 200,000 we have to use. So in 2 years, we've used $1 million of that fund balance. Then that next year, when we have to come up with $1.4 million, what we're really doing is coming up with $2 million, because that one-time money is no longer there. And we got reoccurring costs. So when we use that fund balance for reoccurring expenses, we're actually kicking the can down the road. And one day it's going to come home, the chickens are going to come home to roost.
Right.
And we're going to be stuck with that.
Right.
So
Well, what I would say is.
That's something
right, what I
that
would
concerns
say-
me.
What I would say is this school system, Kent County Public Schools, has been using their fund balance to meet the needs of our school system for the 11 years I've been here and the 5 years prior to that. So we've been using that because otherwise, if we didn't, we would have to make more substantial cuts than we have taken in the years past, which would, in many cases, devastate our schools.
But I guess the part I'm having trouble with, the blueprint was supposed to be the answer to all the funding. It was going to cost us a bunch of additional money, and but it was going to be the end cure-all for the education system. And then this year, as I just pointed out, we're mandated to give you probably the all-time lowest amount in my time, probably in the history of Kent County.
Well, no, I think
Which
the
is
year before
forcing-
you only had to give us $6.
What's that?
I think a couple of years ago, you only had to give us $6.
But I've seen years before this blueprint or anything was even mentioned, where we gave $1.5 million too. I don't know. I don't understand. There's just so many floating questions going around with this blueprint. And if the people that put it in place don't completely understand it, it makes it almost impossible for people like us. I mean, for us to put a $60 million budget together, it takes a lot of thought and work and hard work. But when you got all these numbers floating around that you're not even sure about, it almost makes it impossible.
Right,
It's extremely difficult.
right.
So,
So I do have one last thing that I would like to enter into the record, just a comment that I would like to share, if that would be okay?
sure.
As we navigate the complexities of budget allocations and funding distributions, I want to draw your attention to a matter of fairness and respect concerning our dedicated Kent County Public School employees. This past year, county employees were granted a commendable 6% salary increase, reflecting a recognition of their hard work and dedication. A proposal for an identical increase is on the table for next year, signifying a continuous acknowledgement of their value to this community. It is important to note the disparity in salary adjustments between county employees and those working tirelessly within our schools. School employees on average received 5% increase last year, with teachers receiving a 6% increase. While we understand the complexities and constraints of budgeting, this discrepancy inadvertently sends a message in our community regarding the valuation of our educators and school staff compared to their county counterparts. Education is the bedrock of this community's future, and our educators and school employees play a pivotal role in shaping the minds and lives of our children. They deserve to be recognized and compensated fairly, not only as a matter of equity, but as a demonstration of our collective respect and appreciation for the critical contribution that they make to the community's well-being and future success. Therefore, I urge the county commissioners to prioritize the allocation of revenues towards rectifying this disparity by ensuring that Kent County Public School employees receive equitable salary increases. We collectively reinforce a message of unity, respect, and appreciation for all who serve this outstanding county. Please show KCPS educators, support staff, and administrators the same level of support and recognition bestowed upon other county employees, affirming their invaluable role in this community. In listening to comments from your HR director, Jim Miller, the 6% salary recommendation will help keep county employees competitive with neighboring counties. I would also echo that in my survey of surrounding LEAs that are offering much higher COLAs, which are salary increases and step increases, they're going to receive considerably higher than what is in my budget. In order for KCPS to remain competitive with surrounding LEAs, We need your support as county commissioners. Thank you for your attention to these matters of equity and for your ongoing dedication to our county. Together, we have an opportunity to make a meaningful difference in the lives of those who educate and inspire our future generations. That concludes my presentation.
Any other questions? I thank you.
Thank you.
Not at this time, I should say.
Pardon?
He said any other questions? Not at this time.
Now we have want to hear from the Rock Hall Business Association. We've got Suzanne Einstein, president. Suzanne, I know you got a group with you. Feel free to introduce them or
Okay.
have whoever you want
I'll have
come
a
up.
handout for you too, just a little something. That's good.
Suzanne?
Yes, ma'am.
You can hand that to me.
Oh, okay, cool.
Distribute.
Yeah, it's one of each of these.
Great.
All right. Okay, so I'm Suzanne Einstein, president of the Rock Hall Business Association. This is Jim Rich, vice president of the Business Association. We have also have on our board today Cindy Genther, our secretary. And we also have our transportation committee here, starting over to the right, Susan Barnhart, Donna Walls, Laurie Walters, Steve
Leonard.
Thank you, Steve. For some reason, I always forget his last name. I don't know why it is Steve. Just Steve. Steve Leonard, Joe Music, and Eve Townsend. I'm sorry. Eve. And, sorry. I apologize. And Sandy with our business association also, and of course, economic development is here. Anyway, so just wanted to introduce them, and then we will start it.
Well, welcome to all of you.
Thank you, and thanks for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about this exciting venture that we are hoping we can get off the ground for this 2024 tourism season. Earlier this year, as you know, we found out that Rick Carter was no longer offering his service to Rock Hall, and his pilot program established that there's definitely a need for transportation in Rock Hall, particularly for the boaters in the marinas. We know that the benefits of having a shuttle are many, including the mobility of visitors, residents, improving accessibility to local businesses and the waterfront, reducing the demand for parking, and providing a safe alternative to driving after an evening out. Once we learned that we wouldn't have a shuttle this year, our transportation committee basically just went right to work researching options. And they came up with this 14-passenger van, which you have a picture of right there, in excellent condition and with a handicap lift. So all the stars seem to be in alignment for this. We figured that the committee had recommended a plan that the service would run Friday through Sunday, and it would be May through October. We're hoping to start this Memorial Day weekend with possibly a week in advance to test out the route and all that stuff. We are asking the town of Rock Hall to title the vehicle, insure it, hire the drivers, and keep all the funds in a transportation account. Our committee, in collaboration with the new town's Economic Development Committee, would then work together with the town to establish the routes, the fares, the stops, hours, and all that jazz. The Business Association and our local business community are 100% behind this, 100% supportive of the initiative, and have committed funds of close to $30,000 towards this, towards the purchase and operation of the vehicle. We know how important transportation is to our community and just how vital tourism is to the economic growth of our town and our county. Our long-term goal is to expand the service with additional hours and perhaps a second vehicle down the line. We're requesting the county commissioners consider allocating $20,000 in their FY25 budget to support this transportation initiative in Rock Hall for the upcoming tourism season, and we're willing to work with the county and the town of Rock Hall to explore innovative methods to meet the current needs and future needs of our visitors and our citizens going forward. And that's my spiel, and then I'll hand it over to Jim for a couple extra
To emphasize a
thoughts.
couple of things, I think I've been in Rock Hall 20 years now, and we've had a tram or trolley for probably 17 of the 20. You can see the difference in town business-wise if you have it or don't have it. Probably the best person who knows is Ron, because he drove it more times than we can remember when we needed a driver. I think the fact that the Business Association and the businesses in Rock Hall have committed $30,000, which we're small businesses. We don't have a Dixon Valve. These are all small individual entrepreneurs that recognize the value of this transportation system for our town. We have a number of marinas that people won't come into the marina if they can't get off the marina and into town and get off their boats. And the other thing Suzanne mentioned, we're really trying to get this going by Memorial Day. So if any indication, and I realize you got to get your budget together, and you're 60 million and we're talking 20,000. But any indication we can add, because we have to move forward if we're going to get going by Memorial Day. That's my comments.
Did
Any
you make
questions?
out, how'd you make out, has the town agreed to
They meet on-
insure it and,
So they meet on Thursday, and they're going to be voting on it. We've had several meetings, and we're confident. So that's where we are with that. So
Okay.
hopefully.
well, you have any
I
question?
heard what you said pretty loud and clear, that you hope to start this by the end of May. So you got May and June, and then the rest of the summer to deal with. I would like to enter into a discussion with my colleagues here that maybe we should consider, if appropriate, to go ahead and give them the money now for this very, very worthwhile project, and maybe take it out of contingency or fund balance.
And that, I was,
I mean, I think it's
Personally.
our intent to support your efforts, because we know what it does for economic development as well as tourism.
to start with, I was going to recommend the same thing. I agree with you, John. It's kind of a time-sensitive issue, and to allow them to get up and running. And this, as far as we know, this could be just one-time money, and we do have a little bit of one-time money available that we can do projects, buy equipment, that type of thing. So,
And I think it's important that, as a Board of Commissioners, that we support our municipalities when we can. And certainly this is a way that we can support Rock Hall. We supported Galena last year, and we plan on doing some other stuff this year. So, Albert, do you have?
I would agree with what my colleagues are saying, with certainly worthwhile calls, and hopefully the town and the county gets a return on this investment. I mean, it's a kind of a no-brainer, I think.
it's a pretty unique spot and like you pointed out, I oversaw that the trams that run in Rock Hall for the whole time they were down there until they were done away with. But I don't know that would work in any other town but Rock Hall. And the reason being is because it's on a peninsula and it's surrounded. We got, last time the census, I remember they said there was 1,350 people lived in Rock Hall, and there's about 1,400 boat slips. And in the summertime, each one of them turn into second homes. And it's to get, as town manager, when I was there, answered the phone a lot of times from boaters from Middletown and places, and our Miller's Island, excuse me, not Middletown. But they would call and ask if those trolleys were running, and I would say, yeah, why? And they said, well, we're going to bring 35 boats into Haven Harbor or Osprey or wherever. And if the trolley's not running, we don't have any way to get around, so we'll go someplace else. Unfortunately, back then, that transportation was available. I, for one, thought it was a bad idea to get rid of them to begin with, but that's water under the dam. So I would entertain a motion
I just
to,
have one more question.
Okay.
We can put it on next week's agenda, since this is.
oh, that's
a work
right, we're not
session.
in a real meeting, I'm sorry. This is a work session. I'm getting ahead of myself.
My other question is, how far of an area are you going to be serving?
So within Rock Hall, and we would go to, as far as, I think, Village Hardware, that area, correct me if I'm wrong here. And then go all the way around down to Gratitude and up to, and then all the way down Route 20.
Entire
all the-
town
Pretty
limits.
much the whole town limit, well, yeah, I guess it would be the whole town limits, pretty much.
And then the campgrounds.
And campgrounds and Bay Shore and Haven Harbor South on, and that would be, it would be a certain route that we would take for that,
What about the
Specific.
new
or hours.
restaurant where, I'm calling it the Old Fords, I don't even know what it's called now, it's been changed, I know the lady. But the restaurant next to the vet.
Right, well, it's not open yet.
Right, but I'm just
So,
saying, hopefully in the future. that
At some
it'll be-
point, that would be, could potentially be in there too, yep, yes,
It sounds like you have a commitment from us at this point.
That's
And
great.
we'll put it on the agenda for next week and make an official motion to go ahead and process it.
thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Appreciate it,
All right.
appreciate your time.
Good luck to you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pat, I guess we're going to talk about this short-term rental discussion we have on the agenda. Is that,
Yeah, I think Bill and Jamie are in the audience, all three of us were
Okay.
gonna chat about it.
Can I make a comment before we begin? I just want to thank you guys for supporting the transportation efforts for the town of Rock Hall. It's a grassroots effort, by the businesses and the Greater Rock Hall Business Association. And I also want to share that the Upper Shore Regional Council did commit $15,000 as well to help with the pilot program. And the goal is to make it sustainable. And by having the businesses and the business associations that are directly impacted, I think, that's where the sustainability really comes from. So I just want to thank you. And they do have, and they didn't submit all the details, but they have worked diligently on a budget for 2 years going forward, as well as a business plan. And they are still working out a lot of the details. So thank you very much.
I think all three of us would like to see an expanded transportation program
Absolutely.
throughout the entire county, actually.
Agreed. Me as well.
And I think that would require a really deep dive into the federal and state funding that we currently get for transportation and some pretty significant changes in the way we currently spend those dollars.
More to go.
all right? Pat?
Okay.
Jamie, whoever's going to start it off?
I can start, we want to talk about enforcement because we want a collective, way as to how we move forward. We need to be speaking the same language when it comes to registration or just creating an account to pay taxes online and enforcement. What do we mean by enforcement? Does it just have to do with enforcing the payment of the taxes, or does it have to do with additional enforcement guidelines? So we just like to have an open discussion so that we know how to move forward in the proper way. We have some input and, just some challenges as we work through this, so open discussion to kind of get direction from the commission as to how we move forward with this particular topic.
And maybe to add to that a little bit, I guess the software that you approved for us to purchase has a couple of workflows in it. And so One of them is the identification piece, and we're moving forward with that. We've sent them files, and they're identifying the properties, which hopefully are, going to be big revenue generators for us. And then as we go forward to set up the software, we can set up the tax collection piece, which would involve like setting up an account and paying your taxes. Like you can go online now, you can set up an account and pay your property taxes, you can pay your utility bill. Then there's also the enforcement piece, which would be, will we someday have a license? Do we want a registration process? And those would create different workflows. So unfortunately, we're at the point where we're implementing the software. And we have to make some decisions about whether we input this enforcement flow into there and what it would look like. Or we can, what the software vendor is telling us is that if we don't know now, we can come back and implement later, but there'll probably be a fee. But if we put it in and it's not, and it needs cleanup work later, there'll probably still be a fee. So I guess the question is, how are you feeling about the enforcement piece? Did you have any feelings about licensing, about registration, about whether the enforcement would be for the collection of the dollars, the tax itself, or for enforcement of some regulation?
And if I may, the land use ordinance that you all adopted quite recently that is waiting for a critical area commission review is specifically set up to create enforcement of paying the taxes. And the idea being just that by putting it in the zoning code, there aren't standards for how you run your business. The idea was that if there's someone who's really recalcitrant, who will not pay the tax, we would have the ability to fine them as a zoning violation. So it's just a way of creating a zoning category for that use, and also permitting it in certain districts and not in others. So that's how we've been proceeding, and that's what you have adopted so far.
So that's currently in the land use ordinance?
It's in the land use, but it won't be effective until the critical area commission does a review. But that's what's queued up and ready to go.
And one of the things, we're really at the beginning of this. We don't know what our experience is going to be with collection or enforcement issues. One of the things we could do is just move forward with the tax piece, get, 6 months, 9 months of collection data to see if we have a collection issue. We really, right now, the people who are paying, who do recognize this, we don't really have many issues. They file their reports and they pay. We're not sure with this new population what our experience is going to be. And we also don't know with the summer season coming, what kind of complaints or violations or, things that might find their way into Bill's office. So I think that 6 months from now, we'll probably have a lot more data that we could share with you about both the collection problems we're having and or the complaints that we're getting. So I don't know if that would be helpful to, to revisit it 6 months from now or 9 months from now, when we had more data to tell you about what we're encountering.
And that would coincide with the land use ordinance being effective, looking at target date of December 2024. So that kind of gives us some time to get all the other pieces in place, and then the land use ordinance gets adopted.
So at last week's meeting, we had a brief discussion about this. And we've also had the public hearing for the land use ordinance, and we heard folks that came in that were concerned of what it might look like in their neighborhoods. During the discussion last week, there was talk about, do we want to put a number on how many people could be staying in a bedroom house? I don't know if there's anything in the land use ordinance now that would govern that.
Commissioner Price, that conversation was not recorded, so I don't know if that was after the meeting. I know it was a budget work session, because I did listen to the commissioners' meeting as well as the budget work session, and I didn't hear the conversation about it.
I think we did talk about it.
Not on the, was it
We were
recorded?
talking about the Lady Debbie that was in here, and we
Yeah.
were worried about,
I just want
you
to
know,
make
we
sure I'm
don't
not
want
missing
someone having a
anything.
3-bedroom house and having 10 people come in there to stay.
I think that was, I was there and heard it. It might be on the land use ordinance review part of the
Gotcha.
meeting.
We had some form of
Okay.
discussion publicly
Gotcha.
last week about that. So I don't know whether that's something that my colleagues feel that we need to try to implement now, or do we, I think the gist of what I got from the discussion last week is that maybe we move forward and at some point identify the issues that are facing us and our residents, and then try to do like a text amendment to correct the oversight, or not really oversight, but to correct what needs to be corrected. And then you have an enforcement part of it. Currently, Bill has 2 enforcement officers, and if there are zoning issues, I'm assuming they would fall under their criteria. If, I still believe that it might be smart to put some type of registration process in place here at the 400 High Street. I don't know who would be responsible, where folks would come in and actually have to register their property.
So,
And maybe a very minimal fee for like a permit to be issued that they could display, and it has to be done annually. And the permit, or the sticker would not be reissued unless they're up to date on their
what would
taxes.
be involved in putting that in place, Bill?
So currently, to give reference, we issue about 500 building permits a year. So my understanding is we would then be issuing 100 licenses / permits per year for these facilities. So I think we would definitely need staff. And of course, the consultant has said that you need at least 1 staff person for enforcement per, is it 100?
For full enforcement.
Right. So I think we would have to be looking at changing staffing. For sure, we could not absorb that kind of change in volume. So, and from my point of view, I've been here almost 5 years, and so far I've encountered, I think, 2 or 3 complaints. So I don't know that there's something
I think they've been minimal.
wrong.
Yeah. So is there a way for them to electronically register online? And once you verify that they've fully met the requirements, that you could send them a sticker in the mail saying,
The question is, what are the requirements? Are the requirements for payment? If the requirements are for payment, we don't really need them to register, because they're going to set up an account and they're going to be identified by the software. And either we're going to get 2 reports. One is going to say these people paid, these people were identified and they didn't pay. So we will have no problem identifying who's not paying, and we can follow up with that group. If you want a registration process where there'll be a fee because we're going to enforce that they don't have this registration, that would kind of go down through the other workflow. So I'm not sure, like, if we want.
are you confident that the vendor is going to be able to identify folks that aren't in compliance?
That aren't paying, yes.
That is
That aren't
the-
paying, absolutely.
The number one goal of this software implementation.
I think that, yeah, the compliance and the licensing is a totally separate issue from the payment. I think that they've, and I don't know if you have a different impression, but I think that they're going to identify now, whether they'll get everybody, I think we still might have a few, but of those people that they identify, we absolutely will be able to, because part of this is an outreach to that group. They're going to identify the people. We're going to reach out and say, hey, you're in non-compliance, we can see your advertisement, you're running this establishment, these are the rules, and if they don't pay, we'll be able, like I said, we're going to get 2 lists of people. Here's the people who paid, here's who didn't. So I feel that we'll have the data to follow up with non-payment, just by who pays us. But if you want a licensing and a fee, to make sure that other things are in place, that would kind of flow down into.
Well, I think that what it, and if I'm speaking incorrectly, you just tell me, but I think what he was trying to say, and I like the idea of knowing who is doing this, and if this software does that, because even if we charge $25, $2,500 isn't
It's
gonna-
duplication.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that for us, or for the county, we just want to make sure that we have identified these properties, and we don't necessarily need to collect a fee for that, I mean, because it was going to be minimal anyhow.
Yeah, and we
sure.
don't charge anybody else a fee. Like, if you go online to pay your property taxes, there's no fee.
Right.
Or, because actually, the vendor charges a fee for you to pay online, there's the processing costs. So with any other payments that we accept online, we don't charge the
I just think that
citizens.
we sitting up here based on previous discussions, want a way to be able to track these properties in case there are any problems that arise, that we can try to address them when they come up, I think is what, we unfortunately, I think we don't know what we don't know, right? I mean, that's,
Right.
and as we start identifying, hopefully there are no problems.
And
Hopefully,
that's why I think 6 months from now, we could tell you, like, we could say, okay, so they identified these 100 properties in the county, and of that, 75% are paying, and of that, we've reached out to, 10% of them 3 times, and they're still ignoring us. We would have some data that we could bring back, some collection history, to let you know what we've experienced. And then, at that point, if the,
Whether or not we wanted to look into enforcing something
whether it was worth
else,
enforcing to
looking
try and collect what we
at
weren't
septic
getting.
provisions or parking
and or if we
provisions
needed
or-
to do the text amendments that were, maybe, hopefully not.
To put some teeth in it.
Correct.
So Bill, if I heard you correctly, the current land use ordinance allows for you to do a zoning violation if someone doesn't
Pay the tax.
pay their tax.
The proposed land use ordinance that you've adopted, the current land use ordinance right now, effective today, doesn't address short-term vacation rentals at all. Nothing's addressed, so
But
you
the
all
new-
remedied that with the proposed land use ordinance.
I think it's going to be a process that, we're going to have to walk through it and identify issues and then try to fix those. But we don't really know what they are at this point.
Can I say
And I
two?
think that we'd like to, I'm sorry, Jim.
No.
But I also, as we're doing this, I think it's important to include the municipalities. So that, I would love to see this thing the same everywhere, if we can do that. I know towns are
Well,
different. than
And right now, let's just say all 6 of the jurisdictions agree. All it takes is one new mayor and council to upset that apple cart. So I don't know that we're ever going to be completely
right.
the same.
But the purpose of the software and the MOUs was for us to provide the same information that the county is getting, who is renting, who's paying, who's not paying, and then the municipalities can take actions as they see fit. So that's the beauty of it. I want to add 2 things. I think there's a lot of value in being able to implement the software and utilize the software for 6 months to see the information and stuff we are actually able to extract from it as well. So I want to, and this is going to be a big change to the users. The users were previously paying quarterly, now they have to pay monthly. They will have to pay not have to pay online, but they're able to pay online. So it's going to be a change for them as well. So I think giving us a little time to get this up and running and see what information we are able to collect and seeing how there's a lot of value in that.
And it certainly provides for consistency across the board for everybody.
Right.
Yes.
By doing this. So.
How many do you think we collect from now?
A county?
We don't have the numbers
I didn't
with
bring,
us,
I didn't
but-
bring the report with me either. Just in the county side, I think somewhere between 12 and 20, maybe.
And we know there's 77.
And we hope to get, we think there's how many out there
77 at last count.
that are not paying?
In the county, so that's not the municipal.
Not the towns.
So the difference between the ones that are paying and the 77 total in the county. So how many are
There's a
paying?
fair amount throughout the county, municipalities and
Oh,
county
yeah,
and all,
that-
there's a fair amount out there. So
Correct.
to speak to what Bill said about, he'd been here 5 years and he's had 2 or 3 issues or 2 or 3 problems. That's not a lot of problems, so that's an indication that maybe it won't be too bad, but the best way to find it out, I think, is to go ahead and implement the thing, and then we'll deal with the problems as they rise. I think that's what my colleagues have spoke about as well. We can always we find out that something's a problem, we can certainly do a text amendment, correct it, but if you sit around here waiting to implement something that'll never have a problem, you'll be sitting here a long time, I'm afraid. So
And
best
so-
thing to do, I think, is just go ahead and implement it and then deal. That's how you learn.
And
we'll
would you
deal
like
with
us
it.
to come back in either November or December just to report back on how it's going and just so we don't lose sight of
I'm not
it?
sure that that gives us enough time because the land use ordinance won't have been in effect yet, most likely.
But we'll be able to utilize the software and then,
You'll know
we'll
how well it's
So
working.
we can,
Right.
at least from that standpoint, I don't know if that would be beneficial, but.
Bill, a question for you. Some home housing developments have HOAs. Would that trump this as far as if a homeowner, if a HOA said in this development, we're not going to allow this?
Yes, it's a separate area of law, which we have no domain in, but yeah, those are like private contract agreements, and they have enforcement provisions. And yes, I've certainly heard of HOAs that are able to do that. So I don't know how many of our HOAs are prepared for that, but they can certainly amend their articles and go through that process, and they have separate enforcement rights.
Right, they can be more restrictive, they can't be less restrictive, much the same way as state law affects county law.
But I think for my reason for asking that question, obviously, if there's a housing development that has an HOA and they don't want to have it, or they don't want, they're worried about too many people or too much, they could handle it on that level.
They might get challenged in court, but they could do it, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're going to get challenged in court.
But yeah, they have the tools, absolutely.
Yeah, well, anything you do can always be
That's
challenged
right.
in court, so.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing you say is that we're just going to implement the tax collection piece. We're going to get the data on who's paying and who's not, and that at some later point, we will look at the data and evaluate whether we want to put an enforcement workflow into the software.
I think by adding something to the software for enforcement, you probably don't have a dollar amount at this point, but I remember you saying it's probably a couple $1,000s.
We're waiting for a quote, but honestly, I mean, I think that the additional revenue would more than offset, if we have to. And honestly, we just don't know what we want right now, so to try and implement it now just really doesn't make sense.
I'm good.
Now, will they have when people sign up for this, will they be signing, will we be giving them something to show them that they are,
So it's like
An
paying your,
Airbnb,
they'll have an
breakfast.
account, like with a password, so when they come in every month, what the software does is it creates a tax form for them to fill out every month, so they'll go in and they'll sign in and they'll do their thing and pay their taxes. Will they get anything, I mean, they'll get confirmations of payment. And we'll have the reporting that shows, we'll have, like I said, the identification reports and the payment reports, so that information we'll clearly get,
so we'll be able to clearly see who's paying and who's not?
yes.
And for clarification, for those that are listening, this is not a new tax. This is something that has been in place for many years,
Yes.
and we just haven't been able to get people to comply.
Yeah, with the growth of the industry, it's kind of it's a statewide issue that, we're trying to catch up with the growth of the industry with how to regulate it and get the payment piece in
And
place.
we have always collected it,
Yes,
and then we give it back to wherever the bed and breakfast.
Correct.
If it's in a municipality, we send them the money.
yes.
Yes.
And additionally, I mean, I think it's just worth saying that these establishments really aren't paying anything. They collect the money from the people who come and stay there, and then they pass the money on to us. So there really is no cost to the establishment. It's just that they need to collect the tax and remit it to us.
Right.
In the same way that they do sales tax. And they have to do that, so.
Most people that travel and go on vacation are already doing it in other
Absolutely.
jurisdictions, so.
Yeah,
That's exactly right. You'll see a lodging tax on your Ocean City hotel bill.
yeah. And I think, some of it is people not knowing the rules and some people not understanding, but we're going to clarify.
Very good.
So,
When are we going to do this?
we're hoping to implement with the July taxes, so that would mean that the July taxes would be collected by August 21st, So we're thinking that would be the first month that we would see collection come through there.
Very good.
I know everyone, especially Jamie's staff, have put a lot of effort into this, and Pat and Bill and Shelley. And I think it's long overdue and time to move forward.
Well, we thank you for your guidance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Pat, you're up from one spot, and now you're up
It's okay,
somewhere else, so
I'm
This
here.
is Pat's day.
this is Pat's day.
All right, so now we're going to move right into the budget, and I guess we'll start with where we are after last week. So you have an overview at the very beginning of your book that has an update from, excuse me 1 minute as my binder has opened. Okay. All right, so if you look at the overview, and I think if we can go from your papers for this one, because we have some of the personnel information on the overview, so I'm not sure that I want to put it up on the screen. But basically, if you look at the sheet, you can see with the expenditures that we had $68,368,554, and we, with all the ins and outs and back and forth, we took out $124,000, and we now have $68,244,000. But what I would like to point out is that if you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth item down, you could see that there was an increase for the major repairs at water wastewater that we talked about of $772,000. So if you took that aside, we really took out about 800 and some thousand last work session. So the numbers don't really represent that because of the one item going the other way, but we did make a lot of headway, I think, last week in looking at the categories. So if we walk through, okay. All right, so if we just go through, the second page is the revenues. There really was only one change to the revenue. We recognized that there was about $7,000 of money that we're going to get back for the rental on the election office space. So the revenues remain pretty much unchanged. We still have that $1.9 million in new money. If we look at the expenditure page, oops. What happened there? Sorry. Okay. We can see that our expenditures still exceed our revenues by a little over just under $8 million too. You can see by category where the increases are, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we still have an $8.2 million balancing problem. If we look at the fund balance, and this is kind of a critical part of the conversation because a lot of the money that we have in fund balance is non-recurring and one-time money. So the first column is the FY24 projection, and we are projecting to end FY24 with just a little under $17 million, which would be 29% fund balance, which is the highest number we've seen in recent years. And it's a combination of the additional $3 million in income tax we got, and a lot of it's related to COVID. So when we end FY24, after you set aside 7.5% for our target fund balance, we have about a little over $12,655,000 there as available fund balance. So if we project that through FY25, and we would start out with our ending fund balance of $16 million, if we have all of our requests, that if we funded everything, that $8 million of expenditures exceeding revenues, we would end with a fund balance of $8.8 million, which, might, lead you to believe that, oh, that's a great rosy picture. But the way that we need to look at it is on the next page.
Yeah.
We need to break up that fund balance into recurring and non-recurring. So the first column there shows the non-recurring costs. The non-recurring revenue stream is the lease vehicle loan proceeds, and you can see it's offset by the leased capital on the expense side. And our recurring expenses, our leased capital, we have a little over $2.1 million. And in transfers, that $4.6 million is transfers out to capital projects, to water, wastewater capital projects, and POS. So if you look at that, we have a little over $7 million. So then we have that 12 million in fund balance. So when you look at the non-recurring side of the money that we have available, which is mostly the fund balance and then that little piece of revenue, we're gonna end up with a surplus on the non-recurring side of just under 5.8 million. So that's money that should be used for one-time things. It's something I think we need to give a lot of thought about what we want to do with our 5-year capital plan, because this pot of money would be available for those types of things and not to fund the recurring budget. So that 5.7 million is not available to fund salary increases. It's not available for the Board of Ed request. It truly needs to go towards capital. If we look in the next column at the recurring side, most of our revenues, except for that 290,000, are recurring. So we have a little bit under 59,800,000 in revenues. And then you can see what our expenses are by category there. So we still have 61,170,000 in reoccurring expenses that are in this budget request. So what that leaves us with is a budget shortfall of just a little over 2.1 million. And so that's the part of the budget that we have to address. We have to, in walking through this, that's our target. We're looking to take out roughly 2.1 million out of the budget request in order to balance it on the recurring side. And that's the challenge. Did I lose anybody? Any questions?
It's not a discussion for today, but maybe next week's, we can have something on the agenda to deal with lease vehicles.
We're still firming up those numbers, and honestly, the impact to the recurring, you have the revenue proceeds and it's the debt service payment. So what we're missing out of this budget is the debt service payment on those new vehicles, and we should have a number for you next week.
Because also there's some public safety agencies, both the sheriff's office and EMS, are in a situation where they kind of need an answer on what our intentions are so they can go ahead and make the order. So they're not 8 or 9 months from now getting their vehicle.
I believe they're gonna be in front of you next week with those requests.
They're working on it.
They're working on it.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I'm not really sure if there is, I mean, we can walk through all of the areas again. I wasn't sure if there was a particular area you wanted to start with.
There's an area that I'd like to see us talk about at some point, which has to do with the enterprise maintenance program.
Okay.
I think, briefly, we should maybe go through it with Dan, and
We can have him be prepared to talk about that.
Sure, would you like him?
I just want to make sure that we're doing business in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, and a big part of the savings in that program was the sale of the vehicles. And, we haven't completely turned over the force, but it probably would be good to look at the numbers. Are we really seeing what we thought we'd see?
Well, the numbers you provided me the other day were very helpful. And what I'm a little concerned about is that there's all these fees and everything that are applied monthly. And when you look at it annually, it's a pretty good dollar figure. Mm-hmm. Just to tell people to go change the rule, or, there's all these fees out there that I don't know are really necessary
And maybe we can do some
in the
research
big, in
on,
the big scheme.
are they all mandatory or are they optional? Maybe we can do some research in the meantime to see if we absolutely have to have all of those fees, or, that one fee, I think it's $6 a month to notify us of, the maintenance. Maybe we don't have to have.
The other fee, really, that was $26,000, but these are all things that, to me, department heads should be able to handle within their own department. I mean, I did it when I was at the sheriff's office. You know, it's pretty easy to track on your own and to make sure that you maintain the maintenance. And when we're paying someone else to do it for us, I don't think that that's cost effective.
Okay, well-
But that's just my opinion.
Well, we can have Dan speak to the leases and those costs next week. Okay. Okay, well, we can just start at the beginning, I guess, and walk through each category unless somebody has a preference where you want to start.
We're trying to do something about this $2 million figure.
Right, so let's start with the new positions, I guess I think is in the first tab that you have. There's nothing there. So if you remember from last week, we had originally had 8 positions. We cut 3 of them out. We still have 4 EMTBs in here and a grant manager. On the second page, you can see the positions that have been removed at this point. So I don't know if this is an area where we would still consider some potential cuts, or,
I'm pretty good with the way we did it last week.
huh?
I'm good with last week's.
Yeah, I think for now.
At this point?
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna skip the other salary tab because it's got some individuals on it, so then the next section in your books would be allocations. So how about if we jump over to that one? Okay, and
Is Mr. Queen planning on coming in to tell us about his program?
Yes, May 7th.
May 7th? Okay.
okay. So I think you had asked for some additional information on these, which we did gather. And if you want to make any further adjustments as we go through, Chesapeake College, I think the counties have decided, and that budget is pretty fixed. The library, you'd asked us to gather some information on fund balance, and you can kind of see it, it's the last comment there. They have 176,000, a little over that they keep. They basically keep a 2 months operating reserve and then a reserve for health insurance. So they had, one of the biggest shifts in the funding in their budget was they were reducing what they were using in fund balance by 65,000, and that was increasing their ask to us. So their total ask to the county is a little under 85,000.
Point of fact, last week, we were talking about the Time to Care Act, and Department of Labor had submitted a request to postpone the implementation, and that has been approved, so that 6,700 right off the bat can be delayed.
Okay, great.
So
Yeah,
that-
that was the other piece.
Who was that?
The Time to Care
Time
Act
to
isn't
Care.
going into
Oh, yeah.
effect now until the payments would
Oh, I
start
gotcha. Okay.
next July, not
I
this
see.
coming July, but the July after, and the benefit can be, assuming the timeline is adhered to, people can apply for that benefit the following July, so
I think I
that
hit
comes
the
out of
button.
this upcoming budget altogether.
Sorry, I think I hit a button, it's coming back. Okay, so after the library, we have,
I do think that's part of a little bit of a larger discussion, though, just to be had at some other time. And that is the library would like to pay the employees' share of that mandate. So, for example, we've talked about the county would have to pay X amount of dollars, and each individual employee would have to pay Y amount of dollars so that that benefit can be had. The library would like to pay both sides of that. So, I mean, if it comes out of this year's budget, it's not a conversation for this year, but that is something that you might want to consider bringing up to the library at some point.
Well, whatever we do for county employees needs to be consistent, I believe, with the libraries.
I think that was always the intention, the county's intention. The library has a different thought.
and I mean, it's hard, I know like we want to do equity, but if you remember last year, in order to fund that salary increase, we cut positions out. So, I mean, and I don't know that other organizations, made similar choices, so it's, I forget how many positions we put on hold and didn't fund.
11, if
But
I
it was
remember
really
right.
significant, and the
It's a lot.
trade-off for that was to be able to fund the salary increase, so,
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think that kind of gets unspoken and unseen.
yeah, and I can get you that exact number, but that was how, to a large extent, we did fund it, or we chose to fund it. Sorry, we're having some trouble with the.
Pat's laptop just
It
took a
died.
timeout.
Okay. All right, so here we go again. Okay, all right, so after the library, we have Delmarva Community Services, and I think they are scheduled to come in.
From their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Come
well,
up with,
And DCS, Keith Atkins, who is the interim director, will be in, I believe it's May 21st was the date he chose, so you're not going to see him for a while.
Who's
But
that?
Keith Atkins, the interim director of DCS.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's where Commissioner Price, we were talking about the transportation funding. I mean, I think if there's going to be a different model for Kent County other than that fixed Route 4, that's where the money could be rearranged. But that would have to be part of the plan that gets put forward to the state, which is ultimately funded by the federal government. And so it would take lead time to change that model.
with the volunteer fire companies, there had been some talk about that there might be a change in Betterton. If we were to make that change, the amount of that change would be $32,000.
And that's significant for Betterton, because then they would also lose the billing. And I don't know how much conversation Mr. Landon
I don't think
they've
they're doing any
had.
billing at this point.
Well, I'm sure they're billing for whatever calls they're going on.
Anyone that I know that's doing billing here in the county is the rescue squad. Maybe I'm wrong, Pete, do you know?
It's my understanding that they're all doing separate billing. They're not doing it through us, but they're billing separately.
I can tell you Betterton is not right now.
Is not doing any billing at all?
Not that we can tell. They don't report it through us or back to us. That's
Right.
one of the things that we're working on.
Millington and Galena might be.
Correct.
I
Millington
know
and Galena
Betterton
and the
always
rescue
used
squad.
to. They had a system to bill. Had nothing to do with the county.
No.
And again, the numbers,
thank you.
the dollar values, the dollar values get smaller as we go down here, but, Kent Center, they were looking for the making homes more accessible. And one of the things I do need to do is move this over to the non-recurring. So there still are a couple of these small things. So, I mean, that would help with 98,000 in the switch between the recurring and the non-recurring, if we leave that in. Upper Shore Aging was just here, talking about their budget. WCTR, they've asked us in the past, we haven't funded this item in the past. Not sure if there are any thoughts on that.
Are they coming in? Do they ever come
They
in?
have not signed up to come in. I don't know that they've ever have come in. I mean, they've come into regular meetings, but I'm not sure it's been part of the budget.
I don't think they've ever come in for a
Request.
budget.
Correct.
I mean, I guess, I don't know where the other, my colleagues stand, but if we haven't funded it in the past, I don't know how that we're gonna be able to fund it this year with what we got facing us.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so take that one out. Okay, the Humane Society, you had asked for a breakdown of salary and benefits, and you can see that there. So out of the request, how much is salary and benefits? I think we're still trying to get an answer on the percentage. But that request is an additional 24,560. This is the Greater Rock Hall Business Association. I think this one's gonna come out because we're gonna fund it in,
So I have a question about logistics, Pat. If they give us an invoice for 20K and we pay them out of this year, I mean, would you recommend that we pay them out of this year's funding?
In
Like,
advance?
I mean, that would be an FY 24 contingency fund request is what we were talking about.
It depends on whether you're comfortable advancing the money or you want them to bill you as the program goes along. If it's a one-time payment, we can take it out of contingency.
I just
I think it's
do
a
it
one-time
that way.
payment, yeah.
Just do it one time and be done with it.
Okay.
Probably easier for you to,
Yeah, I mean, to Shelley's point, it probably should be allocated over the life of the program, but I think it's small enough, Shelley, that
If they just,
It's
so
not-
we'll have to make it clear to them that they need to submit an invoice so that we get it out the door.
it's gotta go out the door before June. Yeah, well, I think they wanted to get up and running by Memorial Day,
Right.
so, okay. Next is the Upper Shore Regional Council. Again, they're asking for their 12,000 allocation request that they usually have, plus the micro ag program. That represents a $15,000 increase. Soil conservation. He was in speaking about that, they have a salary adjustment and just a basic inflationary increase. The next one is another new program request. We've never funded this before, but there's a request from, and I don't think we've ever seen this one before. This is from Horizons of Kent and Queen Anne's to provide transportation for students for a summer program at Kent School. After that,
I'd like to hear how many Kent County students are going
out of the 120,
to be involved in that.
I think we certainly need to know a little bit more about it. I don't know.
We can ask them to come in. We can ask them to come in.
Or just send us something telling us, but
he does have kind of a lengthy, but I don't know if he breaks down the population of the enrollment. Okay, we can get that information. Would you like them to come in?
give that, or just
Either
send us.
that or somebody explain it to it. I mean, you can, if one of you talk to them and
Okay. St. Martin's Ministries. Again, we've been funding them for as long as I can remember. They're asking for, a significant increase here, but I think it's based on the population that they're serving. Mosquito control, there really isn't anything we can do with that one, and actually the health department is picking that up for us this year. The extension office has a COLA and an anticipated merit, so all of their request is salary and benefits. Small Business Development Center has a small request. And Cultural Alliance, another small additional request.
Pat, we better go look somewhere else.
Oh, I know.
We're getting down to $1,000.
We are.
Right.
Okay,
So, and Home Ports is also a brand-new request, that's the bottom one on that page. And I know we're talking about $1,000, but we haven't funded that in the past.
so out of here, I mean, we took 45,000 out of the allocations. If we keep track as we go along here.
Did you take home ports
I
out?
don't think our book's thinking
No,
that
Home
way.
Ports, no, I took out WCTR and the Greater Rock Hall. Do you want me to take Home Ports?
It's a new one, I mean, probably not the right year for it.
Unfortunately, I think
I
he's
agree.
right. Yeah.
Okay. 46,000 out.
We got a little bit to go.
Okay, and that's really like you said, the other ones are showing decreases. So the next tab that you have would be capital.
Oh, the summer SNAP.
That came out.
Yeah, that we don't need that anymore. Because the state is paying for it.
Right, so, yeah, we took it, it's already out. Okay, on the capital side, these summary schedules are really kind of small and tough to read on the screen, but the ones by department, we have a page for each department, so probably the easiest thing to do is to walk through it. But if you look at the summary, out of this $2,034,000 in capital, most of it is in Public Works, and the largest part of it is sitting in county roads. So if we,
Dan is available if you have specific questions for him. So if you want to talk about details, let me know and I'll reach out to Dan.
I'd like to talk to him about that dump truck.
you want to start with county roads?
Because I think we're still waiting on one to come in, or does it come in?
I know what you're talking about, and I'm not sure if it came in or not. It was woefully late. It's, I think, an FY '23 truck.
My question really is, how many does he currently have? I know one of them is in bad shape, and that's the one that was on an order to replace it from 2 budget cycles ago.
So we're on page 7, in the capital section, that has a summary of the county roads. So we can check, I don't think I've heard that has come in.
I don't know that I have either, so I'm unsure. I've asked Dan if he can come in.
I haven't heard either, but I've not seen any paperwork come from Vicki to HR either for insurance.
Okay.
So I don't think it's here.
Okay. So if you look down that list, you can see, I mean, they have just under $1.2 million in requests. So they have the dump truck, they have a bucket truck, they have a tractor with an A-boom, they have paving projects, and the surface treatment. They have the Village of Kennedyville stormwater and roadway improvements. And so those are the projects that make up the largest part of the capital expenditure budget. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on any of those, or you want any further information.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to get him in here, because as I recall, I'd like to know like the colleagues, I'd like to know the status of that dump truck. But I'm pretty sure that tractor with the A-boom is to make sure that it's not replacing anything, it's to upgrade and then have an extra for when there is a breakdown, which I certainly understand. And in a perfect world, I would be all for that, but I don't know that this is the year for that. But I'd like Dan to elaborate maybe.
Keep in mind now, this is one-time money we're spending here now, which is,
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
is that part of that $5 million that's available.
Okay.
It wouldn't be reoccurring. It would, this is, for that $5 million, if we're gonna buy it, that's
Yep.
where this
Yep.
will come.
Okay.
All of this will
Yeah,
come out of
that's
that.
right.
And you're right, this is an additional tractor with an A-boom. Having 2 of these type tractors, in addition to the one we currently have, allows us to always have one in operations. Our current one is 2013. It requires more shop time due to maintenance every 200 hours and is increased in operation and repair occurrences.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Maintenance usually takes it out of service for about 3 days, not counting breakdowns.
I think the question that Sheriff raised about the dump truck is a valid question, because we really only used all of our dump trucks probably when we have a snowstorm. And have we got it? Do we really have to have that many?
I think last year they said they had 12. And one was being replaced.
I mean, I doubt if there's very, very few days where you go to there and all 12 dump trucks are going. I mean, they don't hardly have the crews to do. So that, to me, is a legitimate question. Now, some of this other equipment, I think makes sense that they,
No,
you
that's
know,
a
they,
good point. You're
they
exactly
do
right.
to makes things better. I mean, that's,
As long as we're using the one-time money,
Yeah.
I think so.
and that's what it would be, most definitely. But I do think it's a legitimate question as to whether we need that one more dump truck or not.
Okay.
So it sounds like, Pat, that we're gonna leave everything in except maybe the dump truck, and we'll talk more when Dan gets there.
Okay.
But the other stuff can be one-time money.
So, and the thing maybe to keep in mind with this one-time money is the projects that are competing for this one-time money are capital projects and capital expenditures. So, if you, wanted to prioritize the use of this one-time money for some of our larger capital projects, then you might want to look more actively at cutting out some of this capital, because that's kind of the two places that money's going to go. It's either going to go into our capital projects, which we have, we have a couple on the horizon. We have the middle school, we have the regional detention center, we have the EMS, and we have,
And whatever the sheriff's office / 911 looks
ends up
like.
looking like. So while we do have a surplus in these types of funds, the things to, that really we're weighing out the priorities of is how much of that do we maybe want to set aside for some of those future projects and have that pool of money versus, buying the things this year. But those are really the two uses of this pot of money. So as you go through it,
And if you decide, for example, to set aside $3 million for the regional detention center, Pat can put that in a reserve account. And of course, the more that is in the reserve account to pay cash up front, the less the debt service will be, which will obviously affect operating in those years.
and
30, 40 years, whatever the debt service is.
one of the things we usually look at is paying off debt, but quite honestly, the rates that we have now are so low versus what, when we go do one of these big projects and we have to finance it.
Foolish to pay them all.
It's just not a smart move, but that's kind of, the decision with this pot of money is how much to put against, how much to buy for capital expenditures right now for the here and now versus how much to set aside for these capital projects. 'Cause
That OES building, I assume you're probably gonna pay for that.
it's in here to be paid for with cash, the $650,000. Yeah. Yeah, all the projects that were requested are in here slated to be paid for with cash. In addition to that, after that, we have that 5.7. So if you were to trim back any of this, we would have more that we could set aside for one of those future big projects. Okay,
You mean
so,
to tell me that if we weren't building that OES building, we would have that much more money in the,
the 650?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be 650 higher.
so you've already you've already figured in us paying
That's
for
figured
that?
in.
That would be on top of the,
That's correct. And this one-time money is a very unusual situation. It's a combination in the
Oh,
last, 2 years, but it is a significant chunk to think about, maybe putting towards a future project.
yeah.
The projects that aren't in here are the regional jail, whatever we do with the sheriff and 911. I think those are the two that are, and the middle school.
That's all.
That's it.
That's it. So,
And of course, that doesn't touch the courthouse, which is also on the horizon,
yeah.
whatever that looks like.
It's a nice decision to have to make as to what to do with those funds, because we really haven't had this kind of a fund balance in a while. Okay, but if we're moving through this, after roads, on,
There was pull up, where would we be to, I know years past, we kind of put some things on hold out there to the transfer station. Aren't they, there's a couple big projects. One thing they wanted, I think, they were talking about a new truck, because it looks like we're still gonna be obviously hauling trash for
quite a while.
the unforeseeable future.
So the environmental operations budget, guessing that's where it would be, Shelley?
Yes.
So that's on page 20. But I'm really not seeing, I mean, the Nicholson project is in here.
Well, I'm gonna say one more time, I'm not spending a dime until somebody comes and explains that project to us.
And Dan can talk, I know he's been talking with MDE about getting somebody in here.
But,
And I know that they they try to do every other year with some of the replacements out there. It doesn't look to me.
I know that roll-off truck with the hoist system and all, seems like been on the,
Yeah, that's been,
It was there
been
last
for a
it was
number
there
of
last
years.
year, and it had a bunch of miles on it.
Yeah.
A lot of miles last year.
It's to replace a
Yeah.
2004 Peterbilt roll-off truck that currently has over 500,000
I was
miles
gonna-
on
yeah.
it.
It's probably definitely something that we should,
And this truck is utilized to haul recyclables and solid waste materials to recycling markets and landfills. So it gets a lot of miles annually.
Hopefully, it'll last us 40 years.
Yeah, right. No, that's one I think we ought to pay attention to, really. That's, because it certainly gets used.
so the next department after that would be building maintenance on page 24. And right now, there's 210,000 in projects there. I think most of these are, the first two are HVAC systems and the library roof.
Which it looks like we have a strong shot at getting half of that paid for, but we have to move it to FY '26
We would have to push it off another year to get that
to
funding.
get the state funding, the match.
And we talked to the maintenance crew, and they said that they were confident that we
It's
would be able to.
possible we might have to put some more Band-Aids on,
Right.
but we can get through.
Right.
So
that's-
should I move that?
That's a no-brainer
Yeah,
then.
Okay.
yes,
And the
At least
cost,
to me it is.
absolutely.
Should
The
the
cost should-
earmark, should we earmark that for FY '26? Put that in some sort of reserve account?
we can, why can, yeah, we'll put it on the plan, but at half of its value?
At
if you're saying-
half,
At
right.
half,
We're
okay.
looking at getting half from the state.
Okay. Yep, we can certainly make that change.
The state does want to see that we are committed to our half, and I think that if we could show them that it's reserved, that would prove to them that,
Pat, that public Bayside Landing, isn't it scheduled to have some work done this year?
yes,
Yes, let's see, what page is that on?
that will be public.
It's on page 88, if you want to take a look at it.
Page what?
88.
Well, my question is, because if I'm not mistaken, that's like a $600,000 bill. Is that gonna, have we got the money to pay for that, or will that have to come out of this 5 million?
So, let's see.
So, and there's also potential for DNR to approve additional funding, but we don't have that commitment yet.
Do you know how much that would be, Shelley?
110,000.
It's in there as cash, the transfer to Bayside? Okay.
What is it?
It's in there as cash. It's in there as being paid for. So it's already,
So we don't have
Incorporate.
to worry about finding money for that. You've taken,
everything, we usually start out at the worst case is if we had to pay cash for everything.
okay.
And then if we,
So we don't have to take it out of this pot of money we're talking about. It's already taken care of.
yes.
Okay, that's great. I'm just trying to think of some of the big projects that I've heard us talk about in years, over the years, and make sure we.
Okay, so if we go back, After building maintenance, the sheriff's office is on page 33.
The courthouse,
Courthouse?
no, is there,
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's
I
in
don't,
his debt.
I was gonna say, I don't think,
I just checked on the entry.
okay,
It's in his debt, not as cash, sorry.
what's
okay.
that?
Bayside.
Bayside would have to reduce that
We would have to take it out of the $5 million.
I didn't want to
That's why I pulled
contradict
it
you.
up in the system.
Okay. So, yeah,
But it could be reduced down to by like another $150,000-$200,000 if we can get more money out of the DNR,
Which is a possibility.
which they've told me was
I
a
got you.
possibility because the project
But
increased.
it does, it starts this year,
Yes.
December.
I think we've
Don't have
pushed
to be
this
done,
out
but-
as far as we can, right?
Right now, it's
Yeah.
extended to this December and that's it. And I don't know if they'll give us another extension if we needed it.
Under the
It's-
current approval.
it would start in December, or
No.
we should have it
I
done in
think we should
December.
have it done.
thanks. Okay.
Add them few numbers up, and what did we come up with?
So if we take that 600, was it 615 out of the 5,000,007, you're still looking at 5,000,002.
No, but we've decided that we were gonna fund pretty much all, at least we left the county road stuff in there for now.
So if we haven't made any changes,
We took the dump truck out, that's the only thing.
Oh, okay, I thought you were gonna wait.
Tentatively.
Okay. That was
Dan
100
is literally on his way, so.
Oh,
we should be
okay.
able
I was
to-
gonna say,
to
so that's
discuss that
110. I
momentarily.
thought you were gonna hold off on that one. But yeah, so the 110 would, if we take that out, hold on a second, we can keep the total going here. So we're at 5,789,000.
Sounds like Dan can stop and turn around, really.
So if we take the 110 out, we're really at 5,000,009 then. So then if we have the 5,000,009, but we wanna do the Bayside
But we just-
project, we'd
that-
have,
We gotta do it, or we're gonna lose
Right.
the other 50%.
so then we
of
take
the funding.
600,000
So we
out of that, so then we're at about 5,000,003.
Yeah,
But I mean, that, yeah, so we'd be about a 5,000,003 surplus.
but I think we pretty much just, or at least we talked about leaving that truck in there for the transfer, that roll off.
Yeah, that sounds like it's.
And then whatever are those other projects, we left in the county roads. Now, they might come out eventually, but for now, they're in. I guess I'm just trying to get an idea how much we're spending here as we go.
So yeah, we'd be at a 5.3 million surplus instead of the 5.7 that we started with. And there's several more departments, but there really aren't many more big dollars in here. The sheriff's budget is on page 37, no, 33. Hey, Dan.
Come on up, Dan.
All right.
Specifically, we're talking about the dump truck request from the roads division.
Yes.
We were just wondering, you know, you got a fair amount of equipment on here, though, the boom tractor for mowing and stuff, the bucket truck, all of that stuff, which we've left all that in here for the time being, but we were just curious, do we really need this dump truck? I mean, very seldom, I guess, we have all those dump trucks on the road during the day. And you really need it during snow and stuff. You think it's time that we say, we don't need 12, we need 11, or,
How many teams
So-
do we have?
We have a total of 11 dump trucks right now,
okay?
and there are 9 routes for snow and emergencies in the county. So during such an event, we obviously have 9 of the 11 are in regular use with 2 spares. Of course, we can't schedule the snow, so if a truck is down for repairs at that time, we pull the spare in, or if there's an issue with the truck running the route, we utilize a spare. Day-to-day operations of the roads department, they typically have 6 to 7 trucks running on any given day of work. Our culvert pipe replacements, our tree trimming, those are used in regular rotation, 6 to 7 of the 9 main ones. And the spares are only needed if there are multiple trucks in during regular operation, non-emergency operation. Our 2 spares right now are both between 20 and 25 years old, with over 200,000 miles on each of them, and in high engine hours. There is a dump truck we anticipate to be delivered within the next couple months from, I believe that was 23 order. That truck is expected to be delivered soon. It would be our intent to sell off one of the spares we have in replacement, so we're not looking to grow the fleet, to your point.
I guess what we're looking, or look, I'm not speaking for my colleagues, and I'm speaking for myself right now, but I'm sort of looking, I like what the other equipment that you've got on this list. I think they would be more important than having another spare dump truck. That, if that makes any sense.
I understand your point. We are not looking to increase the number of spares we have, and the issue with the spares we have is due to their age, we're seeing when they are used more frequent maintenance requirement, and it's harder to find parts to do proper maintenance on them when things do break. If we can find them, the cost of repairs for that is going significantly up. And the DOT maintains a high maintenance standard and operation standard for those vehicles. So it's becoming expensive to keep the spares at the level required for them to actually be operational. So it's our request to in fact replace the spares by cycling in new trucks and pushing everything else down the line.
Was there something else on this list then that you would rather, I guess we're asking you to prioritize, we were prioritizing things, is there something else that?
Well, and if you notice on page 8, 9, and back, they have prioritized them. So the first priority is the Lamson Forest Road Bridge, and I think we're committed on that one because ours is a match. And then second priority is the standard cab dump truck. Third is the bucket truck. And 4 is the tractor with a boom.
Now, the replacement of that bridge, that number on page 8, would that have to come out of this money?
That is,
Question.
I would have to confirm the breakdown. That is largely federally funded.
Right.
So that,
Yeah, 234,000.
Oh, 234,000.
Right, that's
Right.
what it is.
that is the county
Right,
share,
right.
yes.
Yeah.
When I saw that million.
Oh.
We had it made.
So, and then from year to year, you know, then beyond the trucks, you've got the paving projects and the surface treatment, and some years only a portion of that is funded, and the roads that are listed there would get bumped to the following year, the ones in the best shape of the ones listed.
Yes, and to your point, we would, I'd say the prioritization listed in the packet would be accurate, where after the bridge, replacing the dump truck would be our next priority.
What would be your top priority?
Lamson Forest Bridge,
Uh-huh,
with the dump truck following number 2.
sure.
Yeah, because of, again, the age of the spares, and we can't just get it working. It has to be to DOT standards in order to put it on the road, so.
If you had to pick between that, doing that, and then say, that boom, that tractor with the boom, or the tractor with a boom,
Or the bucket?
or the bucket, you'd still rather have the dump truck?
Yes. Yes.
So how old is the tractor with the boom that you currently have?
The tractor would not be a replacement, it would be a supplement. We have one tractor currently,
And that's a 2013.
a 2013, yes. Every 200 hours of service, it requires maintenance, which can take up to 3 days of maintenance. So in a 40-hour week, that's every 5 weeks, we lose it for 3 days.
It is a good piece of equipment to have trimming the roadways and all. I mean,
Absolutely.
They make, it makes a great, it does a good job, but just one,
What would be the trade-in value of the existing one?
Of the tractor? I do not have that information offhand. Our intent with the tractor would be to supplement rather than
We know
replace.
what your
Yeah,
intent
yeah,
is,
yes.
but you've got to understand what.
It's a fair question.
what
No, I
our
understand.
problem is.
That is something,
We're going to have to cut more than you here, Dan.
I understand. I can,
I guess what I'm saying is, I'm asking you to work with us here a little bit, too, so that, you know, you're helping us help you.
yes, I can certainly confirm, I hesitate to even guess at a number right now, but I can confirm what a trade-in value would be for the existing A-boom. As well as the dump truck, because again, the dump truck, as soon as we receive the 23 order, we would be auctioning off or selling the, one of the spares. And then should we receive a new dump truck this budget year, we would do a successive selling off. So, I can confirm those resale values.
Well, that would be a start to help us, I think.
Absolutely. We typically, I mean, I'm talking about a 23 truck that we've had ordered for quite some time, so these do take quite a bit of time once they're ordered to be delivered as well.
It looks like we pushed off the Kent Mill, Camp Road, and Dave's Hill, and Lee Avenue last year, correct?
Yes.
I don't have any, I don't drive those roads to be able to have any indication of.
and I assume we've, in our conversations with the people of Kennedyville, we've been promising them
Right.
to do that work up there. I think we probably got to go ahead and leave that in there to,
And I guess, Dan, maybe the question is if you absolutely had to pick something that had to be deferred into next year, what would be the least harmful to your department?
I already know what he's gonna pick.
I mean, you can get back to us if you want to think about it, but I think that's kind of what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah, my immediate response would be the A-boom. But I can confer with my roads department and set that in stone next week.
These roads, Dan, that we have slated for the surface treating, I'm assuming that's tar and chip. Are these on an as-need basis or just a rotating cycle? In other words, you know, every so many years, or have we, you know?
it's usually some of both. Most of the time, it's, there's a list you get on, that's a rotating list, but obviously, the board has the authority to say, we've been on this one, this and that. This one can live a couple more years or
Okay.
another year, and we
Sure.
can.
Or if one's in
Yes.
particularly bad shape,
Right,
it
that's-
can bump up on the
Yeah,
priority
sure.
list.
I mean, I guess what I would like to see personally, this is just me speaking, is we do the ones that we need to do, and maybe,
One approach that we've used in the past is you simply give them a dollar amount, and then they prioritize.
Right, that's what we did last year.
Yeah, yeah. we were talking a little bit about environmental operations as well with the truck and even the Nicholson, the treatment plant. So has anybody from MDE,
I don't have a commitment for a date
Committed.
at this time. I will see if I can get that this week.
Okay.
Yes.
What was that?
the commitment to come talk to us, the MDE?
Oh,
come
oh,
talk to us
yes,
about Nicholson?
about
Treatment
the-
facility.
Yes. Very good. The roll-off truck with the hoist and all for it, that's I know that's been on the want list for several years, and it's not getting any younger. We were thinking about making sure that was in there.
Okay. That would be greatly appreciated.
The surface treatment of the road going in there, is it one that needs, does it really need it, do you think?
If there were something to be cut, that may be a candidate, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I go in and out of there once in a while. I don't notice any real potholes and stuff that jars your teeth when you ride. It seems like it's in fairly good shape to me, but
And-
I do know that truck's, or I think that truck's a necessary, something we need to replace.
How many of those trucks do we have?
One,
We just have one.
yes.
Wow.
And it's
How long-
beyond its service life, probably.
How long do you think it would take us to replace that, Dan? Is there a long, I mean, I know things have improved in
The roll-off?
in that world, but, and I'm assuming we put all of this out to bid for the lowest bid. We don't necessarily need a,
A lot of times with these bigger pieces of equipment, we can piggyback on a Sourcewell contract, which saves us a lot of time.
I will say with Nicholson, that tar and chip was to redo the existing blacktop at Nicholson, as well as tar and chip areas underneath some of the drop-off that is not currently. So that is one that could be scaled back as well to maybe, if the actual tar and chip that's out there could last a little longer, but we could scale it back to just cover up some more of the area. As for how long the roll-off truck would take, I don't have a firm answer. I would guess 9 months to a year, but that's a guess at this point. I can get that more nailed down.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I was just curious if we're talking about.
I like the idea of what Shelley suggested, that we provide Dan's with the overall amount. And let him decide what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's what we did last year.
Yeah.
Is that something you want to entertain some now or just?
Well, we can't do it now.
Okay.
I do have some particularly helpful people in the roads department, and I believe the A-boom tractor would get about 25,000 on resale, to answer your question from earlier.
So as far as the road surface treatments, you can maybe get your staff to maybe prioritize what needs to really be done this year, and maybe give us a dollar amount that you think is feasible.
Okay. Yeah, I do know that on the left-hand side of that chart, there's two categories, a 1 and a 2. I believe the 1 would be the higher priority.
Okay.
And the 2 would be the secondary. So my thought right now is the cuts would come out of that 2, and we would work from there toward a number we could agree on.
Page 17.
Yeah.
And to your point as well, there's probably some roads in here that are aged, but not in desperate need. But I look at Walker Road, for example, which is less than half of a tenth of a mile long. If we're doing the surrounding roads, economy of scale probably warrants it on the list. So if we
Get it done and out out of the way.
Right, if we're gonna do most of a neighborhood and we leave the tiny little piece, it's that much harder to get them back to that spot in the future. But we can, to your point, we can certainly prioritize.
These number twos are a fairly significant amount of money. But in comparison to the overall project.
It says that Peterbilt that we use at transfer stations got over 500,000 miles, 500,000 miles.
That's correct. I actually had to double check that myself because it pops off the page when you see that, yes.
Well, when you get your, I think unofficially, it's probably be a good idea to look into when you could get one of them.
Sure.
That's unofficially, but you might check it out.
And any other rabbits that you can pull out of your hat, the next time we see one another, Dan, would be greatly appreciated.
Understood.
I mean, if those number twos are $98,000 change, so.
What are the big issues at the courthouse that we might be able to fix some? No, I'm not talking about an addition or
Right, yeah,
any of that.
exactly. I think we've attacked, other than those incrementally replacing the individual HVAC units.
I guess that's what I'm talking about, the heat and air conditioning.
Yeah,
They still got some needs for that out there.
and those are in the buildings maintenance.
I was gonna say, there's,
Page 24.
right, they're in there, yeah.
Yes.
I think the HVAC is in there, right, Dan?
Yeah.
It is, yes. The courthouse has 54 total units. The great majority of them are at the end or beyond their expected service life. This year in FY '24, we did replace 2 that were unbudgeted, but the units simply failed and could not be repaired. So this would be a proactive approach. At 3 a year, it would require 54 divided by 3. It would be a long program, but 18 years to replace them all, in theory.
So are we saying that on page 24, where you're gonna push that 133,000 over to next year?
FY '26, and reduce
Yeah,
by
but we're
half
gonna
for the-
continue to, with the two above it, we'll pay for them.
Yes, and with the library roof, my understanding from conversation with the library is that with the grant we are applying for, the work cannot happen till FY '26. But they would need from the commissioners a letter confirming that whether or not you get grant funding, that roof replacement will proceed in FY '26.
Gotcha.
So it would be a letter of commitment to the total amount in support of the grant, which would fund half of it.
But we don't know the total amount yet because this is just an estimate.
Yeah, it would be based on the estimate,
Right.
yes.
And with the government center replacing 2 of the HVAC units per year, I can attest that they are failing because I was without heat for over a month in my office. So all the units are failing all the units are going to need attention in this building and the courthouse. This is a real concern. In fact, I'd actually be shocked if it's only 5 between the 2 buildings in any given year. You figure this was renovated in 1999.
Where are we repaving at the government center? Oh, that's next year.
So that has been on our, let's see, that's the Public Works Complex.
Yeah, that's
See that
next
one?
year, yep.
We've been trying to attend to the parking lots little by little with all the government buildings, because they are, again, they're all about the same age, and they're all aging significantly, so.
With the Public Works Complex as well, it has the highest volume of heavy equipment of any site, so it has a lot of heavy trucks driving through the parking lot every day. I can tell you that the structural evaluation and recommendations that was on the list, gratefully you all did authorize that effort. We had a structural inspection last week, and there are no immediate significant constructional concerns for this building or the courthouse, based on a couple items we had seen. We'll be working with.
We didn't need to, I gave you my opinion based off of pictures, but nobody wanted to believe me.
There is, specifically in this building, an area of significant water intrusion, we think is related to the drain pipes surrounding the building. So we'll work with the water sewer department. They just got they're ordering the new camera for their jetter nozzle, and we'll be snaking the lines around here to figure out where the stream of water that does flood the basement is coming from. But at this point, it has not, and there's going to be a letter prepared from structural engineer confirming that no significant building improvements will be needed as a result of it.
That's good, great news.
The lobby project at the courthouse, has it ever gotten started, or are they still designing it, or?
Yes, about a week and a half ago, myself and the project architect and Judge Murphy met to review the plans. There are some minor tweaks to that being made. I expect within the next 2 weeks, we should have a bid set ready to go to put that out to bid. And the current estimate, I don't have an exact estimate on that project, but I do anticipate it to be substantially lower than the $100,000 original estimate, so.
We haven't solved many problems with that.
We've talked through a lot of things, though. We're getting there. Dan, the only other thing is in the parks budget, since you're here, there's only one piece of equipment. It's a 72-inch zero-turn mower.
Yes.
Is that needed this year? Could that be delayed? I know you guys turn over mowers a lot, but since you're here
And what department's requesting that?
that's grounds
Grounds
maintenance
maintenance.
out of the parks.
So they do have, I believe, 6 mowers. And their ideal request would be to replace one every other year, which gets about 10 years of life out of a mower. I believe our oldest is 10 or 11 years old right now, so it is up there in time. But that said, it is operating today, and they do a good job of maintaining it.
I tell you, I'm not one to say whether it's needed or not, but I tell you, if anybody follows them, it's a ton of grass that's cut in this county every.
It is.
I mean, when you start clear down on East Neck Island and go through this whole county, they got a lot of grass.
And it always looks good.
Yeah.
It always looks good.
Yeah.
They do a great job, and I'm working with Mark Dixon to actually quantify the regular just regular mowing and park maintenance hours that go in for any given park in a week. The numbers are high, and they do good work with it. I believe it's been 2 years since we've replaced any mowers, is what I was told, which predates my time here, but that was, I believe 23 was the last time they got a new mower. So they would be on and every other year. This would be the year, but we're not down a mower currently.
Right.
So, it's been a while since I bought a mower, but am I reading this correctly, 35,000?
Yes, sir.
What kind of mower is that? I mean, I know it's a 6-foot deck.
It's probably front deck. Yeah,
6-foot front
diesel,
deck, yes.
Yeah, with the diesel engine.
The quote we have is $37,500, but we would get a trade-in value, a small trade-in value on the existing mower of $2,500. If I wrote it down right.
Inflation.
It's yeah, it would be a 2008 mower that we're replacing right now with about 2,300 hours on it.
Dan, let me ask you this, only, I mean, when we're talking about thousands of dollars, not, as I recall, all the mowers that they run are the front deck
They are, yes.
mounts, or mowers, and they are the most expensive. I'm not saying they're not better or what.
Sure.
Worth it, but would a mid-mount mower would probably save about, I'm guessing here, because I haven't bought one in a while, but $8,000 to $10,000. Would that meet their needs, or is this?
I would take your guess at that over mine, and I can certainly speak to Mark about
I
what
mean, we're
options
talking
there may
about,
be.
you know, we're talking probably, like I said, around 8,000 if I had to guess. I mean, it's not.
Almost the price of a car.
Well, oh, yeah.
Used to be.
Yeah, right, right.
And to your point, there is a wide range of facilities they cut.
Right.
I mean, there's, and right now they're also assisting.
And maybe that's what they need to replace too in the cycle, so I don't.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, they could, you know, there's a difference between Wharton Park and some of the smaller parks. If they dedicated certain mowers to certain parks to make that work, that very well may be a possibility. I'd be more comfortable giving a definite answer after I spoke with Mark a little bit.
Thank you.
I think that covers all your areas, Dan.
Unless we want to talk about water.
Wastewater, oh, yeah. So water, wastewater. It's on page 86.
Dan thought he was done.
No. Been here long enough to know it's not that quick.
Didn't take you long to figure that one out, did it?
Now, some of these projects, like the Kennedyville pump station, the upgrades of some pump stations, or one, at least one, isn't that on that ARPA list?
The Kennedyville, the design is on the ARPA list.
It's on, the design of it.
Yes, and that is nearing completion.
We don't have, I don't see, I know we've talked about it, and we are all aware that we're starting to have more of an issue all the time with operators for these water and wastewater plants. But I don't see any recommendations of how we're gonna deal with it.
I think our intent would be for FY '25 to be a bit of a transitional year with the internal staff, where we're working towards some of our seasoned utility techs becoming certified.
How many of those do we have on hand now? Utility techs? I mean, do we have enough utility techs that as they move forward and obtain licenses or whatever they're gonna do, become operators?
Right now, it's about 50/50, isn't it? in the
Yes.
Division. So there's, I mean, some utility techs have no desire to move on, but it's our intention for anybody that wants to move on and become licensed to move in that direction.
Well, I can tell you, I was called, and this really doesn't answer your question, but it was kind of good news, I guess. I was talking to Jeff Miller last week one day, And Mr. Wayne Gilchrist, through some program of his, had some college students, I'm assuming from Washington College, in the environmental studies program. And they toured the facility in Betterton. And Jeff, the guy, Miller, who used to be since then, they've hired an outside entity to, but Jeff was
He
there.
was the operator at Better.
Correct, yes. And Jeff was there, and he could not, I mean, he was just elated with this group of young people who were there, and he said, Howard, they were interested. They were actually interested. He said they took samples back so that they could study the samples. I don't know whether that answers any of your questions, Ronnie, but at least, I mean, hopefully, maybe we can continue to cultivate that relationship with the college. And, hopefully, some young person that'll graduate from environmental studies will want to further their, go right on into this field and help out the entire county, well, state, county, municipalities, the whole 9 yards. But he was.
The state also has begun an apprenticeship program for folks interested to learn the basics of it.
Hold on just a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Suzanne, you lose something? huh?
I brought my glasses, but.
Huh?
I brought my prescription glasses, so I was backtracking.
Oh, okay, all right.
right.
Good luck finding.
I'll see 'em here. Thank you.
If we find them, you'll
we'll let you
know. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. The state does have a relatively new apprenticeship program that would allow or encourage hires of people who may not meet the current qualifications or licensure, but would give them exposure and on-the-job training, hands-on, working with utility techs and operators, and require and provide a significant portion of their salary paid for by the state. The county's portion of that program is included in the budget as well to hopefully bring some additional and fresh blood into the program as well.
Now, how many operators we have now? Do you know right offhand?
We have 5 budgeted positions. I believe we have 5 operators with 1 soon to retire, and we recently hired a utility tech who was a former operator. I anticipate within about 6 months, he will become an operator again. Yes.
Good.
That's maintaining current level, to your point, not growing, but maintaining at least.
Do we want to break for, I mean, you just,
I just took care of Ronnie's second.
what do you think? You want to break for a half hour or something and somebody wants to use the restrooms or go get a bite to eat or something, whatever you want to do with that?
Sounds good. So it's almost 1
Is there a
o'clock.
better time to do it?
I wasn't sure what time you wanted to go to. I think at this point, we've touched on most of the capital. The only other section really that we haven't talked about today is the operating. So I don't know, I wasn't sure if you know.
I don't mind, personally, myself, you said he's going to leave at 3 o'clock.
Around 2:30, 3 o'clock.
2:30 to 3 o'clock. How about if we took a half hour and then we'll do that, and
Okay.
if that's okay. We'll do that then. And let's break we'll be back here at 1:30.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Absolutely.
We put you on the spot.
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
Oh, my.
I know.
Keep me on my
I had no idea
toes.
it was that late.